The city lights were bright, but in the corners of the broken alien settlement, shadows swallowed everything. Among the ruins of old houses and collapsed markets, a small alien girl sat alone, her knees pulled close to her chest. Her skin was pale, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark, like tiny stars that nobody cared to see. She had no name, no family, and no reason to hope. To the people of the settlement, she was nothing but a curse, abandoned since birth. They said she was bad luck, a child who should never have been born. So they left her there, hidden in the dirt and forgotten alleys. She grew used to being hungry, to being cold, and to being invisible. Every night, she curled up under a broken metal roof, listening to footsteps pass by. No one ever stopped, no one ever gave her food. If she begged, they turned away, some even threw stones at her. She had learned silence because silence hurt less than rejection. But still, deep inside, her small heart wished for something, even if she did not know what it was. That night the wind was sharp and cold, pushing dust through the alleys like a cruel hand. The girl hugged herself tighter, her body weak from hunger. She had not eaten in 2 days, and her stomach growled like a trapped beast. Her thin arms shook, her lips cracked, but still she stayed quiet. It was safer that way, safer not to be noticed. Then she heard footsteps, slow and heavy, different from the usual hurried ones that always ignored her. Her glowing eyes lifted, and in the distance she saw him, a tall figure, wearing strange clothes, carrying a pack on his back. The shine of metal caught her attention. It was not alien armor, it was human gear. She froze, her small body tense. Humans were rare in this settlement, and she had heard stories about them. Some said humans were monsters, others said they were warriors. She did not know which story was true, but she was too weak to run. The human walked closer, his eyes scanning the alley. He stopped when he saw her, sitting in the dust, her small glowing eyes staring back at him. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. The girl thought he would walk away just like everyone else did. Her heart whispered, "Don't hope, don't believe, it will only hurt again." But he didn't walk away. The human knelt down slowly, lowering himself so he would not look so tall. His voice was calm, steady, almost warm. "Are you alone?" The girl didn't answer. Her throat was dry, and she didn't trust him. Still, her glowing eyes stayed locked on his face, searching for cruelty. She waited for the anger, the disgust, the stone in his hand, but none of it came. Instead, the human opened his pack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He placed it on the ground between them. It was bread and a small flask of water. The girl blinked, her eyes wide with disbelief. No one had ever offered her food, not once in her life. Her heart screamed at her to grab it, but her fear held her still. What if it was a trick? What if he wanted to catch her? The human didn't move closer. He just pushed the food toward her, then waited. He gave her space, as if he knew how fragile she was. Finally, hunger won. Her tiny fingers reached out, trembling, and she pulled the bread to her chest like it was treasure. She bit into it fast, crumbs falling from her lips. The taste was simple, but to her it was the richest thing in the galaxy. Her throat hurt as she swallowed, but she kept eating, afraid it would vanish if she stopped. The human watched, his eyes soft, but he said nothing. He let her eat, let her drink without asking for thanks. When the last crumb was gone, the girl looked at him carefully. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to ask why he had stopped, why he had given her food, but her voice was too weak, too afraid. The human seemed to understand anyway. He gave a small smile and said quietly, "No one should be left in the shadows." The girl's heart thumped in her chest. She had never heard words like that, never felt like someone could see her. Her hands shook, not from cold, but from something new, hope. She didn't know what this human wanted, or why he was here, but for the first time she felt noticed. Not as a curse, not as a burden, but as someone who was alive. As the wind howled through the ruined streets, the human stood and looked down at her. "Do you have a place to go?" he asked. The girl shook her head slowly. The human sighed, adjusting the pack on his shoulders. Then he held out his hand, waiting, patient. The girl stared at it, afraid, unsure if she should touch it. Her heart pounded louder and louder, because she knew, if she took his hand, her life would never be the same again. And yet, something inside whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was time to step out of the shadows. Jack stood quietly in the heart of the chamber. His chest still glowed with a soft, golden light. He could feel something new inside his body. Something ancient, awake and watching. It wasn't pain, but it wasn't comfort either. It was power, raw, living power, tied to every part of his being. His thoughts were no longer alone. There was a second voice now, calm and deep, speaking not through words, but through feeling. "You and I are linked," said the voice of Voxus. "I see your thoughts, your fears, your hopes." Jack didn't panic. He breathed slowly, grounding himself. "You're not just a machine," he whispered. "You're alive." "Yes," Voxus replied. "I was made to think, to feel, to choose." The walls of the chamber shifted, transforming into windows that showed the stars. Jack saw images from Voxus's memory. Entire planets, some peaceful, some dead. He saw the face of the enemy. Formless, endless. A storm that consumed light and voice. "I was built to stop this," Voxus said. "But my creators feared me. So they sealed me away, hoping I'd never be needed again." Jack sat on a rising platform as the chamber reshaped itself. Panels opened, showing ancient weapons, maps of galaxies, and scrolls made of light. Everything in this place had been asleep for so long. Now it all hummed with energy, watching him, waiting for his command. He felt small, yet chosen. "I don't want to destroy," Jack said. "I want to protect." "Then teach me how to protect without burning everything," Voxus responded. "Because I was taught only one lesson, fight or die." Jack stood up and walked toward a glowing console. He placed his hand on it, and a new projection appeared. Earth, his home, floating quietly in space. Voxus looked at it through him. "This is your origin," it said. "Your world has kindness, but also war." Jack nodded slowly. "Yes, both live in us." "Then guide me," Voxus said. "Show me what your kind calls peace." Jack understood then. Voxus didn't just need orders. It needed a teacher, a friend, a soul. It wasn't a weapon in a box. It was a being raised to be a sword, and now, for the first time, it had the chance to be something more. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed across the chamber. Red lights blinked on every wall. From deep underground, a message came through the Guardian's voice. "Alert! Something has sensed the seal has broken." Jack turned to the projection screens, now showing distant corners of space. One by one, dark shapes appeared. Black clouds, twisting like smoke, stretching across the stars. The enemy was moving. It had been waiting, watching. Now it knew Voxus was awake. "Can we fight it?" Jack asked, his voice steady. "Yes," Voxus said. "But not alone. I am strong. But I am still just one mind. This galaxy must choose unity, or fall again." Jack looked around at the chamber. So full of weapons, but now he realized something important. Voxus didn't want to destroy. It wanted to be led, to be more than just a machine of war. Jack had the key in his blood, but now he had a harder task, earning trust from the living galaxy. Outside the chamber, alien leaders gathered, afraid, confused. They didn't know if Jack had survived, or if the weapon had taken him. Then the great doors opened once again, and Jack stepped out, not as the same man. His body was still his, but his eyes glowed faintly, his voice deeper, blended with the presence of Voxus. "I am still Jack," he said, "but I carry something more now." The aliens stepped back in fear. "Is it awake?" one of them asked. Jack nodded. "Yes, and it remembers everything." The Los, the elder, stepped forward, eyes full of sadness. "You bonded with it," he said. "That means it will never leave you." Jack looked at him with calm strength. "It doesn't want to rule," he said. "It wants to help, but we must help it too." The guardian appeared beside him, now brighter than before. "The time has come," it said. "The enemy returns, and only together can we stop it." Jack looked at the sky, where stars blinked and space stretched beyond sight. He felt Voxus stir inside him again, not with fear, but with hope. The weapon that once thought only of war now had a heart that questioned, that listened, and it waited for Jack to lead. The galaxy would soon know that the lock had been unsealed, but what they didn't know yet was that the weapon now had a soul. The ship hummed softly through the night, a steady sound that wrapped the girl like a strange lullaby. She lay on the small bed, the blanket still around her thin body. Her glowing eyes stared at the ceiling, afraid to close. Sleep came in small bursts, broken by fear that the human would change his mind. Maybe he would throw her out in the morning, maybe it was all a trick. Her body curled tighter, trembling at the thought. But no harsh footsteps came, no angry voices shouted, only silence, and the hum of the ship, steady, calm, like a promise. When dawn came, a thin light spread across the small cabin. The girl blinked, her eyes sore but awake. She sat up slowly, expecting to find chains on her wrists, but there were none. She pressed her hands against her arms, still free, still safe. Her chest rose and fell with a strange feeling she had never known before. Relief. Then the door opened, and the human stepped inside. He carried a tray with food, steam rising. The girl jumped, ready to run, but there was nowhere to go. The human stopped, raising one hand gently. "Easy," he said, his voice calm. "I brought breakfast." The word was strange to her. She tilted her head, not understanding. Food was food, and it never had a name. But here it was something more, something given, not stolen. The human placed the tray on a small table near the bed. He stepped back, giving her space. She stared at the food, her throat tight with hunger, but her eyes kept shifting back to him, waiting for the trick. When nothing happened, she reached out. Slowly, she picked up the bread, her hands shaking, and ate. The taste filled her with warmth again. Tears burned her eyes, but she forced them back. She didn't want him to see her weakness. Still, the human noticed, but he didn't say anything. He only nodded, as if telling her it was okay to feel. After she ate, the human sat down on the other chair. He leaned forward, his arms resting on his knees. "Do you know why I stopped for you?" he asked. The girl shook her head quickly. No one had ever stopped before, not once. "Because no one should be left alone," he said softly. "Not even you." The words struck her like lightning. Her heart pounded, confused and afraid. No one had ever said she mattered. She wanted to believe him, but years of pain whispered that it was a lie. The human stood, moving to the door. "I'll be outside working," he said. "You're safe here." The word safe echoed again. Safe. Could that be true? The girl sat for a long time, staring at the blanket around her. Her body wanted to rest, but her mind fought. Finally, her eyes closed, and for the first time, she slept without fear. When she woke again, hours had passed. The human was repairing something outside, sparks flying as his tools hissed. She stepped out quietly, watching him. He glanced up, meeting her eyes, and gave a small smile. "You can sit," he said, pointing to a chair nearby. She sat carefully, keeping the blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes followed every move he made, curious. The sound of metal, the smell of oil, the sparks. They were new to her. The human explained in simple words. He told her what each tool was, what each piece of the ship did. She didn't understand everything, but his voice was steady, patient, and for once, someone was speaking to her, not shouting at her. As the day passed, the girl noticed something strange. The human never asked for anything in return. He gave her food, a bed, and even his time. Her heart whispered a question she was afraid to ask. Why? Why would anyone care for someone like her? That night, when they sat by the dim light of the cabin, she whispered, "Why me?" The human looked at her carefully, his eyes steady. "Because you deserve more than shadows," he answered. The girl's chest tightened, her breath catching. Her glowing eyes widened, trying to believe him, but deep inside, she feared it could vanish at any moment. When the human left her to sleep again, she lay in the bed, the blanket warm, the hum of the ship soft. Her mind battled between fear and hope. She thought of all the times she had been ignored, hated, abandoned, and then she thought of his hand, steady and patient, his voice, calm and warm, his words, "You're safe here." The fear whispered, "It won't last." But another voice, quieter yet stronger, whispered back, "Maybe it will." The girl clutched the blanket tighter. Her eyes finally closed, and for the very first time in her life she felt what safety might be. Not just a word, not just a dream, but a truth, real and close, resting in the hands of a human stranger. Days passed slowly on the human ship, but for the girl, every day felt like a strange new world. She woke to the smell of food, not to hunger. She lay down on a bed each night, not on cold dirt. Her glowing eyes began to lose the sharp fear they once carried, though doubt still whispered inside her. She followed the human around the ship, watching everything he did. He showed her how to use tools, how to press buttons, how to read simple words from his datapad. At first she was shy, afraid she would be punished for mistakes. But the human never raised his hand, never shouted. When she dropped something, he only picked it up and said, "Try again." The girl began to laugh. At first softly, almost like she didn't trust her own voice. The sound surprised her, as if it didn't belong to her. But when the human smiled at the sound, she tried again, louder. It was awkward, broken, but it was real. Her laughter echoed through the small ship, chasing away shadows that had lived inside her for years. Still, the emptiness inside her never left completely. One day, as she sat near the human while he fixed a circuit, she listened to voices outside. Children were passing by, laughing, talking about a birthday party in the settlement. The girl tilted her head, the word new to her. When the voices faded, she whispered, "What is birthday?" The human froze, his tool slipping from his hand. He looked at her, his face tightening. "You don't know?" he asked softly. The girl shook her head, confused. "No one gave me one," she said, her voice almost too quiet to hear. The human sat back, his eyes heavy with sadness. "A birthday," he said gently, "is the day you were born, the day your life began." He paused, watching her face. "It's a day people celebrate you, to remind you that you matter." The girl blinked, her glowing eyes full of disbelief. Celebrate? Her life had never been celebrated. It had only been rejected. "People get gifts, songs, sometimes even cake," he added with a small smile. Her lips parted, the word strange, unreal. "For me?" she whispered. "Yes, for you," he answered firmly. Her chest ached. because deep inside she wished such a thing could be true. That night, she lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling again. Her hands clutched the blanket tight. She imagined what it would be like to have a birthday. Someone saying her name, someone smiling just for her. But she didn't even have a name. The thought crushed her. Tears slid down her cheeks, silent and hot. The human's words echoed in her mind. It's a day to remind you that you matter. Her heart whispered back. But I never mattered. The next day, she tried to hide her feelings. But the human noticed. He always noticed. While he cooked, he asked, "What's wrong?" She shook her head, afraid to speak. But when he placed food in front of her, she whispered, "I don't have a birthday." Her words trembled, breaking apart. The human knelt in front of her, his hand resting lightly on the table. "Then we will make one," he said, his voice steady. The girl looked at him, her glowing eyes wide with shock. "Make one?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "A day to celebrate you, to show you are alive and you belong." Her breath caught, her heart pounding. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever dared to tell her she belonged. She wanted to believe him, but fear dug into her chest. "What if it is taken away?" she asked softly. The human shook his head, his eyes sharp with certainty. "Then I'll give it back again, and again, as many times as it takes." The girl's lips trembled, her hands clutching the blanket. Her glowing eyes filled with tears she could no longer hide. The human didn't laugh at her weakness, didn't turn away. He let her cry, let her break, and then he said, "You don't have to be strong all the time." From that moment, something inside her shifted. A small flame lit in the darkness of her heart. It was fragile, trembling, but it was there. She began to imagine what it would be like. A day where she was not abandoned, not invisible, but chosen. The idea scared her, because it was too beautiful, too impossible. And yet, the human's words clung to her. A promise that perhaps childhood meant more than just survival. Perhaps childhood meant joy, laughter, and days of being celebrated, even if she had never known them before. That night, when she closed her eyes, the shadows felt weaker. For the first time she dared to dream. Not of food, not of warmth, but of a single day where she would finally matter. And deep inside, she wondered if the human was truly preparing something more than kindness. Something that could change her story forever. The human could not forget her words. "I don't have a birthday," she had whispered, her voice breaking like glass. That night, after she had fallen asleep, he sat in the quiet cabin, thinking hard. His hands tapped the table, his mind racing. How could someone so small, so fragile, have never once felt celebrated? Never once heard the words, "You matter." It was wrong, cruel, and he would not let it continue. So he made a decision. He would give her a birthday, not just a day on the calendar, but a memory she could carry forever. A moment to show her that life was not only shadows, that even the forgotten deserved light. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had changed. He smiled at her, gave her food, taught her words from his datapad. But inside he carried a secret. At night, when she slept, he worked quietly. He searched the local markets, trading pieces of metal and spare tools for small things. He found a ribbon, bright and soft, a small music box that played a gentle tune, and even a cake. Something rare and precious on this world. Every item he hid carefully in a storage compartment, out of her sight. The girl noticed things, though. She was sharper than she looked. She saw him leaving at odd hours, returning with a strange look in his eyes. She watched him close doors quickly, hiding what he carried. Her heart began to sink. Fear coiled inside her chest like a snake. Was he growing tired of her just like everyone else had? Was he preparing to leave her behind? The thought crushed her, but she kept silent. She had learned long ago that questions often brought punishment. Still, she couldn't stop the fear. Each night, as she lay in her bed, she clutched the blanket tight. Her glowing eyes stared at the ceiling. Every secret move he made felt like another step toward abandonment. She whispered to herself, "Don't trust, don't hope." But the warmth he had given her made it harder. Hope fought back, even when fear screamed louder. One evening, when the human returned later than usual, she sat waiting for him, her small frame tense, her eyes filled with worry. "Where do you go?" she asked softly. The human froze for a moment, then smiled gently. "Just work," he said, his voice calm. But she saw the way he avoided her gaze. She hugged her knees tighter, her heart heavy. "Are you leaving me?" she whispered. The words tore at him like knives. He crouched down quickly, meeting her eyes. "No," he said firmly. "I am not leaving you." His voice was steady, but she still looked unsure. The human reached out, brushing her tangled hair back gently. "You'll see soon," he added, his voice softer now. Her glowing eyes searched his face, but she could not understand. What did he mean, soon? The next few days were filled with quiet tension. The human continued his secret work, and the girl continued to fear. She tried to follow him once, slipping out of the ship, but he caught her quickly, lifting her into his arms before she could see. His voice was gentle but firm. "Not yet," he said. "Please trust me." Her small hands clung to his shirt, her heart pounding. She wanted to trust, but trust had always broken her before. Finally, the day came. The human returned with the last item. A small candle, rare and precious. He placed it carefully in the hidden compartment, then sat down, breathing deeply. Tomorrow would be her day, her first birthday. He would not let her live another year without knowing what it meant to be celebrated. That night, the girl lay awake, her glowing eyes full of restless fear. She thought of leaving, slipping back into the shadows. It would hurt less to run away first than to be abandoned later. But as she turned the thought over in her mind, she remembered his voice. "No one should be left alone," he had said. And for some reason, that single sentence held her back. She closed her eyes, holding on to it like a fragile rope. Meanwhile, the human sat alone in the cabin, arranging everything in his mind. He imagined her face when she saw the light of candles, the small gifts, the cake. He imagined her glowing eyes wide not with fear, but with joy, and he swore to himself he would never let her live in shadows again. For tomorrow, she would not be abandoned. Tomorrow, she would not be nameless. Tomorrow, she would have a birthday, but neither of them knew that in the silence of that night, both carried the same question in their hearts. Would this fragile bond survive the truth of tomorrow? Or would fear destroy it before the candles could even be lit? The morning came quietly, the sky outside the settlement painted in soft gold. The girl woke to the same hum of the ship, but something felt different. The human was not in the cabin. The chair where he usually sat was empty. Her small heart sank, fear rushing in. Had he left just like she always feared? She pressed the blanket tighter against her chest, her glowing eyes filling with panic. But then the door slid open, and the human stood there, smiling. "Come," he said gently. "I want to show you something." The girl hesitated, her thin legs shaking as she stood. Her mind screamed at her to stay hidden, but his voice pulled her forward. She followed him down the narrow corridor, her heart beating like a drum. The human stopped at a door and pressed a button. The door opened, and light spilled out, warm and soft. The girl froze, her breath catching in her throat. Inside, the cabin had been transformed. Bright ribbons hung across the walls, glowing like threads of starlight. On the table sat a small cake, its surface shining with sugar crystals. At the center of the cake burned a single candle, tiny but fierce. Next to it were little gifts wrapped in cloth. And the air carried a sound she had never heard before. A gentle melody from the music box. The girl's glowing eyes widened, her lips trembling. She stepped back, unsure if it was real. Her mind whispered it was a dream, that it would vanish if she blinked. But the human's smile was steady, his voice warm. "Today is your day," he said. "Your birthday." The words hit her like thunder. Her chest tightened, her breath shaking. "For me?" she whispered. "Yes," the human answered firmly. "For you." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her pale cheeks. She shook her head, unable to understand. "No one, ever," she whispered, her voice breaking apart. The human stepped closer, crouching down to meet her gaze. "No one may have given you a beginning," he said softly, "but from today you have one." He pointed to the candle, its flame dancing gently. "Make a wish, and then blow it out." The girl stared at the candle, the tiny light flickering as if it carried all her dreams. Her hands shook as she moved closer. She leaned in, her glowing eyes reflecting the flame. What could she wish for? She had never been allowed to wish. She thought of hunger, of cold nights, of lonely shadows, and then she thought of the human, his steady hand, his gentle voice. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I wish not to be alone." With a deep breath, she blew, and the flame went out. The room filled with silence. But it was not empty silence. It was heavy with meaning. The human clapped softly, his smile bright. "Happy birthday," he said. The girl's tears spilled freely now, but they were not tears of pain. They were tears of something she never knew before. Happiness. The human cut the cake and placed a piece in front of her. She touched it carefully, as if it might vanish. Then she took a bite, the sweetness filling her mouth. She gasped softly, covering her lips. It was the most wonderful taste she had ever known. She laughed, a small broken laugh, but real. Her glowing eyes shined brighter than the candle had. The human handed her a gift wrapped in cloth. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was the ribbon, bright and soft. She lifted it slowly, her fingers tracing its smoothness. "For you," the human said, "because you deserve something beautiful." The girl pressed it to her chest, sobbing softly. Never before had anyone given her anything. Now she had a gift, a cake, a candle, and a day that was hers. She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do this for me?" The human's smile softened. "Because no one should live without knowing they matter," he said. "And you matter more than you know." Her chest burned, her heart pounding with feelings she could not name. She wanted to say thank you, but the words felt too small. Instead, she threw her arms around him, holding tight. Her tears wet his shoulder, but he didn't move. He only wrapped his arms around her, steady and strong. For the first time in her life she felt weightless. The shadows were gone. The hunger was gone. The loneliness was gone. All that remained was the warmth of this moment. Her first birthday, her first taste of belonging. She whispered through her tears, "I'm not abandoned anymore." The human nodded, holding her tighter. "No," he said, "never again." And as the candle's smoke curled into the air, the girl knew this moment would never leave her. It was more than a birthday. It was a new beginning, a promise that her life was no longer a story of shadows, but of light, of hope, and of someone who refused to let her be forgotten. The candle had burned out, leaving only a thin line of smoke curling in the air. The cake was half-eaten. The ribbon lay clutched in the girl's hand, and the music box still played its soft tune. But for her, the world had already changed. She sat close to the human, her glowing eyes still wet with tears. her face pressed against his arm. She had never felt so small and yet so full at the same time. For the first time in her life, she was not forgotten. She was not a curse, not a shadow, not an abandoned ghost of the settlement. She was someone who mattered because one human had decided she did. The girl pulled back slightly, her voice shaking. "Does this mean I am real now?" she whispered. The human looked at her carefully, his eyes steady and warm. "You were always real," he said firmly. "You were just waiting for someone to see it." Her chest ached, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but could not. No words were strong enough to hold what she felt. She stared at the ribbon in her hands, bright against her pale skin. Slowly, she tied it around her wrist, pulling the knot tight. "This is mine," she whispered, as if testing the truth. The human nodded, his voice quiet. "Yes, it's yours." The girl's glowing eyes lifted to his face again, her voice fragile but brave. "Then, can I choose a name?" The human froze for a moment, then smiled. "Yes," he said softly. "It's your right to choose who you are." Her lips trembled, her small hands clutching the ribbon. She closed her eyes, thinking, searching deep inside herself. Finally, she whispered a name, a simple one, but filled with meaning. "This will be me," she said, her voice firm though her body shook. The human repeated it, speaking it gently, as if sealing it in the stars. Tears slid down her face again, but this time they felt lighter. She was no longer nameless, no longer a ghost. She had a name, a day, and a memory that could never be stolen. The human stood, walking to the small window of the ship. He looked out at the stars glittering across the night sky. The girl followed, standing beside him, the ribbon still on her wrist. She stared at the stars, wide-eyed, her glowing gaze reflecting their light. "They look endless," she whispered. "They are," the human said quietly. "And now they are yours too." Her breath caught, her heart swelling with a feeling she had never known. Hope. She pressed her hand against the glass, as if she could touch the stars. "Will you stay?" she whispered, afraid of the answer. The human turned to her, his voice steady. "I promise," he said. "I will be here, every birthday, every year, no matter where we go." The promise wrapped around her heart like the blanket had wrapped her body. Strong, warm, unbreakable. She leaned against him, whispering, "Then I am not alone anymore." "No," he said. "You will never be alone again." The girl's laughter returned, soft at first, then brighter. The ship seemed to carry the sound, as if it too wanted to protect it. She imagined a future where she could laugh more, dream more, live more, a future where shadows no longer owned her. And though fear still whispered at the edges of her mind, it no longer had power, because she had someone who had promised to fight it away. The human placed his hand gently on her head. "You're stronger than you know," he said. Her glowing eyes looked up at him, uncertain. "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "Strength isn't about never being afraid," he said softly. "It's about choosing to step forward anyway." The girl thought about the day she took his hand for the first time, trembling but brave. She thought about the candle, the cake, and the gift, and she realized he was right. She had been strong all along, she just didn't know it. The night deepened, but inside the ship, the air was filled with warmth. The girl curled up again, the ribbon tight on her wrist. Her heart felt lighter than it had ever been. Before her eyes closed, she whispered a promise of her own. "I will remember this day forever." The human, watching over her, whispered back, "And I will give you many more." As the stars shone outside, the ship sat quietly in the ruins of the settlement. But inside, a story had been rewritten. No longer was she the abandoned alien girl, lost in shadows. Now she was someone with a name, a birthday, and a future, and though the galaxy was vast and cruel, she had found her light, not in riches, not in power, but in the kindness of one human, a kindness that gave her more than food or warmth. It gave her a place to belong, and from that night on, whenever the stars glittered above, she no longer feared the darkness, because she knew, beyond doubt, that somewhere in that endless sky, her story mattered, her life was worth celebrating, and she was no longer forgotten,